Hello there. Maybe, just maybe, there is one person who can save the Tories from themselves. Boris Johnson is now flailing from one disaster to another, taking his party with him. And on top of that, he is taking the country in exactly the wrong direction. But people are still clinging faithfully to him because they are frightened of the implications of a newcomer to number 10. But those supporters of the Conservative and Unionist Party must look at what Boris is doing with that party, not look at what's written on the tin. And it's not called a party because it's a political group. No, they just like the thrill of a party, especially when it's illicit. Sadly, the Tories are no longer the party of small government, low taxes and low national debt. Just look at their tax and spend policies. They would be enough to make Jeremy Corbyn blush. It is no longer the party of law and order, nor the party of taking back control. And it is definitely not a party of equality, nor of levelling up, as all we see is rules coming out, for us, that the Tories and their chumocracy can ignore at will. And then there's all those shady contracts, Wallpapergate and Partygate. But the real horror of Boris Johnson's Tory party is that he is already taking England down the slippery slope towards a dystopian future of the powerless individual being a mere tool to be used and abused for the greater good. With the concept of the greater good being defined by the government of the day. This is the new Tory party, and just one look across the floor at the opposition benches tells you that they would be far more draconian. And the worst of these policies will be the mandatory health passes that people will have to show to go about their normal lives. I no longer have any faith in the Tory party, and never had that much to begin with. But like many people, I was excited by the prospect of a libertarian government. However, the last 18 months has proved that was wishful thinking, as we have been taken down a path to turn us into a nation of divided people under strict authoritarian rule run by a Prime Minister and government that is not to be trusted, and who have gone back on their promises and lied to the electorate at every given opportunity. Wake up, people! Boris is not your saviour here. He is driving you down that path to tyranny. He is part of the problem. And the sheer arrogance of them shines through when you see that the government has already issued instructions for people to follow, even before Parliament has voted to confirm those rules. Now, these health passes, just like all other measures, will be limited and part of a set of temporary rules to begin with. But once in place, they will quietly become a permanent feature of society, and then more and more venues and restrictions will be added to the list where you have to show your papers. And if you're not up to date, no entry for you. This is the route we are going to take, be in no doubt about that. Just look around the world and understand the forces at play here. And no, it's not for your benefit. I have to say I have no words to describe the anger that myself and many others now feel towards Boris Johnson and his government. Many people put their trust in him to keep their freedoms intact. That has proven to be a monumental mistake. He has no intention of doing that. Nor do the vast majority of Tory MPs around him. They are content to see the people's rights eroded. I've just seen a Twitter video of German police wandering around a city centre carrying 2-metre sticks to measure if people are obeying the rules. And that sort of thinking and those types of procedures will percolate through to England and the UK unless we say no. And if the Tories think that doubling down on restrictions and going from Plan B to Plan C is going to save them electorally, they need to think again. The people of this country are a freedom-loving people. They did not vote Brexit to have their rights stripped away. and I fear that many politicians are falling for their own psychological nudge tricks and press releases. But at least a hard core of Tory MPs are willing and brave enough to face off against their own party's drive to tyranny. And one of the more vocal is the MP for Wickham in Buckinghamshire, Steve Baker. And it may be that he can turn a lost-its-way Conservative Party back to its fundamental roots. Writing in the Telegraph yesterday, he said, "Millions of people across the country were inspired by our message of hope and unity, and they placed their faith in us, in many instances for the first time in a generation. I am filled with sorrow to see us squandering this goodwill and trust. Across a range of issues, today's Conservative Party is in the wrong place and heading in the opposite direction of conservatism." Exactly as I outlined above. And importantly, he shows that he understands the division that health passes would bring and says that he cannot in all conscience vote for such a thing. This debate goes to the heart of the nature of the society that we are creating. Conservatives don't create societies where people must live and work in fear that a minister might, without notice, impose restrictions on them. They create societies with freedom and hope, he writes. But he will have his work cut out, because as far as I can tell, the majority of those in Parliament fervently believe that terrorising people into obedience is now justifiable. In fact, more than that, a preferable way to proceed. Tyranny is easier than democracy. All egged on by certain well-known members of the press who will accept no dissent from what they see as the superiority of their view. For them, there is no discussion, just punishment, fines, imprisonment, and other brutalisms to be meted out on those who have the temerity to disagree. Their perfect society is one of fear, rules, and compliance. A society where your freedoms are stripped away and all that's left is the ability to do what the state allows you to do, as long as you show your papers. And every time you produce your papers for inspection, you reinforce that tyranny just a little bit more. And then it will dawn that these health passes only allow you ever-diminishing permissions. They do not bestow freedom. Now, Steve Baker does have, at the last count, 66 fellow Tory MPs who will vote with him. And there is also talk of half a dozen or so junior ministers who are planning to resign in protest at these rules. But the senior ministers and secretaries of state appear to be keeping a very low profile on all of this. And many are ganging up on Baker and his fellow rebels, saying that Boris Johnson put them there, so they should just be grateful and toe the party line. Muzzle your morals, keep your mouths shut, and do as you are ordered. And they may have a 3-line whip imposed on them. But would Boris use the nuclear option of removing the whip from 67 out of his 80-seat majority? This is not my idea of democracy, but I fear it is the view of the majority of our politicians in both houses of Parliament that it's time to put the carrot away and get the big stick out. The day that Westminster votes for health passes is the day the political clock starts its unstoppable countdown to absolute tyranny. Baker and those other like-minded politicians need to get together with people from across the political spectrum outside of Westminster, people like Nigel Farage, and get a real campaign going. So what's your opinion on losing your freedoms? Please like and comment below. Please subscribe and like this video, buy a mug and support me on Patreon or PayPal, and thank you for watching.